we just talked about wisdom, and we're going to continue to talk about wisdom. We talked about the definition of wisdom and how our society puts so much emphasis on knowledge and experience, and there's so much more to wisdom than that. And we talked about the 5 levels of consciousness and wisdom and what gets us stuck from being at that highest level of wisdom. And then we talked about the fact that there's 3 brains when it comes to wisdom. Yes, there is the head, and that is our knowledge and our accumulated experience, but it's also our gut and our heart. And our gut acts as the unconscious brain of that accumulated experience. And our heart tells us what we value so that we can make decisions based on what matters most to us. And our heart is where we find our courage, but it's also where we find our fear. So we defined wisdom as the wisdom to know the truth and the guts to do something about it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to zoom in on these 3 brains, the gut, heart, and head. And we're going to talk about the roles of these 3 brains so that we understand how they make a great team together when they work collaboratively and synchronicity. And then we're going to talk about, when they don't work well together, how it creates a state of confusion and fear. And then we can't have the wisdom to know the truth because they're battling with one another. And we don't have the courage to do something about it. And through this conversation, it will help you to be that wise person that you want to be. So let's get started with talking about the gut. The function of the gut is to alert us to pay attention. That's all. We do not want to make decisions on the gut alone, because what happens if we do is we get a gut alert. We get a ping in our gut that says, whoa, stop, pay attention. Something's going on here. And if we make a quick decision without synchronizing the heart and the head, what happens is our gut sends a message to the amygdala part of our brain. And the amygdala part of our brain has been referred to as the lizard brain. That part of our brain can only make black and white decisions, either or decisions. So increased gut intelligence and wisdom is not listening to your gut alone. Let's be very clear about that. Because you'll have limited thinking of fight and flight decisions instead of integrated decisions that consider, what are you valuing here? And what are all the possibilities available to consider? This is the open-mindedness, the creativeness, the intuitive that says, aha, this is that just right decision for you based on all these possibilities, considering what is real and also what you value. So let's take our situation today. We had a pandemic. There's no doubt that's true. That's a fact. There is a virus. And it was different than any kind of virus we had ever had before. And no, we do not have a vaccination for it. But my belief is there was a little bit of not only a gut alert, but a reaction to the amygdala that went into a fight-flight reaction, a very limited all or nothing decision to just shut down the world. Then suddenly we had a secondary problem, which was the economy. And now people are starting to talk about how do we take care of our health and the economy. And both values are very important. And it's not to say that, of course, life is more important than money, but both are important. Because if we don't have an economy and money, then we're going to have another problem with life, right? Feeding people and so on. So how might we take care of both? And what we're seeing in the world is people are having a hard decision getting beyond this or that. And you hear people battling this or that all the time, instead of how might we have both? And so I think this is a great show for us to watch in decision making. That what would happen if we would have really had more increased wisdom and gut intelligence? What other possibilities would we have come up with to protect people and their health? Besides thinking, well, we can't do that at all until we have masks and vaccinations and, more hospitals, so therefore we have to shut down the whole world. What if there were other possibilities? What might that look like? How might we have health and a thriving economy? So this becomes a wonderful time to practice wisdom globally, but for ourselves as well. And to learn that when we get that gut alert, again, the brain and our gut is simply to say, wake up and pause. Not wake up and react, wake up and pause. And now what are we pausing to? We're pausing to say, okay, what's happening? This level of wisdom, of understanding, what's happening around me, what are the facts, and what's happening within me. And within me means we start to go to the next level, which we'll talk about in the next video, which is as I look at what's happening around me and I look at the facts, let's take this pandemic as an example again. I look at the facts of the statistics of how many people are getting it and how many people are dying, and I look at the resources who are talking about those facts, and I see conflicting information. What does my gut tell me is true? And when I look at the facts and understand what's happening with the economy, and I look at the conflicting information, what does my gut tell me is true? And later on, we'll talk about then asking yourself, and what do I value? But what does my gut tell me is true? Because when we ask that, our gut knows. Our gut knows when something's not syncing up, like, oh, I was told this, but this piece was missing. And then we find out this piece later on, we're like, okay, well, if I consider that piece that they didn't talk about, maybe something else is different, right? So wisdom means we have this ability to allow our gut to alert us when it's not the full story, folks. Yep, that's what your gut does. Your gut knows when it's not the full story. There's a missing piece here. Something's not jiving. And again, we have to stay in that and wonder. That's the key to increasing our gut brain, is to wonder, that's not jiving. Why? That's not jiving. What's missing? What's not syncing? It's asking ourselves those curious questions and then allowing ourselves to pause and to listen. And interestingly, I think the gut is such a powerful brain, because when we ask those questions, when we say, what is missing? Suddenly that piece of information will come to you. It's magical. When we say, what's not jiving? Suddenly your unconscious brain will tell you what that is, because you'll get some other information to say, this is it. So we have to spend time with that gut alert, wondering, being curious, asking it questions, so that things begin to sync and jive. And once they do, then we're ready to go to our heart to understand more of its function. But we know we're not quite ready to dive into that yet. As long as we're feeling anxiety and depression, that means our gut is saying something is still not jiving. Because anxiety and depression come from the gut. We have more hormones, neurotransmitters, and neurons in the gut than we do in our heart, than we do in our brain. So if you're feeling at all about a decision, anxiety, or depression, it means you're not listening to your gut and what's not syncing up. And you might say to yourself, oh, it's really hard though. What if I never get the proof I need? When we ask and we believe, we will receive the information we need. That's how powerful our unconscious gut is. We just need to be willing to have the courage to ask what's not syncing. What piece is missing? Awesome. And the more you practice listening to your gut, I will tell you this, it will strengthen and get smarter and smarter and smarter. The more you ignore it, the more it just deadens. It's like a muscle. If you use weights, your muscle strengthens. If you ignore it, it flattens out. All right, we're gonna go to the heart next and talk about the function of the heart and how to increase its wisdom, like we talked about the gut. And then after that, we're gonna talk about the head, and then we're gonna talk about how to increase the synchronicity of all three. So excited. Thanks for joining.